That said, I'm going to read some of my poems from the various books that Black Lawrence has published over the past few years. The first book they did is called The Unemployed Man Who Became a Tree, and this is the title poem. I lost my last job in July, then spent the rest of the summer working on a tan. With little money left, I searched the want ads until coming across an opening for a tree. The spot was just a few blocks away near the path that runs along the river. I hurried over to the square patch of dirt where the city cut the last tree down, then stood on it, looked around, liked the area, and decided to take the position. Within minutes, my legs went stiff as my feet began to root the soil. Arms branched out. Skin became bark. The paper didn't say what kind of tree was needed, although my limbs looked maple. From the waist down, I was all oak. By evening, I was just about done and even began thinking like wood. How to bud April green enough to get the spring going early this year. The only bird I ever cared about was Charlie Parker. Now I wanted a flock to rest on my limbs, build a nest on the highest branch that sprouted from my ear. A place to call home, a place safe from cats. By evening, the fog that crawled in on its knees was gone, and there I was alone, holding up the moon in my branch shaped like a right hand for the entire city to see, smiling. This next poem is from a new collection that Black Lawrence will be publishing, I think next spring, next March perhaps. And the title of the collection, as Gina pointed out, is Playing Poker with Tennessee Williams. And this is the first poem in the book. And I'm really fortunate because the landscape pretty much informs my poetry. So I'm lucky to be living in New York because there's no room for writer's block. All you have to do is look out the window and there's something to write about. So this is called Pomegranate. It's how New Yorkers can come together. A woman walks by the bench I'm sitting on with a dog that looks part lab, part Buick. Stops and asks if I would like to dance. I smile. Tell her, of course I do. We decide on a waltz that she begins to hum. We spin and sway across the street in between parked cars, and I can tell she realizes she chose a man who understands the rhythm of sand, the boundaries of thought. We glide, and Fred and Ginger might come to mind, or a breeze filled with the scent of flowers of your choice. Coffee stops flowing as a waitress stares out the window of a diner when I lead my partner back across the street. When we come to the end of our dance, we compliment each other. And to repay the favor, I tell her, be careful, since the world comes to an end just 3 blocks to the east of where we stand. Then I remind her, as long as there's a '59 Cadillac parked somewhere in a backyard between here and Boise, she will dance again. As she leaves content with her dog, its tail wagging like gossip, I am convinced, now more than ever, that I once held hundreds of roses in my hands the first time I cut open a pomegranate. My dad grew up in Galway, Ireland. And as kids growing up, he had this saying he would say to my brothers and myself, remember kids, the reason God created liquor is so the Irish wouldn't take over the world. So I was thinking about that recently, and I came up with this poem that sort of came out of that expression my dad used to say. And it's called Photo of My Grandfather Smoking a Cigar. So I had a grandfather who never visited us. My dad didn't want him to. I came across his old photo in a box after cleaning out my closet. He's sitting in the backyard, a cigar in his mouth, so he didn't have to talk to any of us. It's been years, but I've memorized everything he never said. I can see he really didn't have lips the way I remembered. His mouth is just a slash under his nose. Hair he combed over his bald head hangs down like a dish rag, covering his left ear. We lived 30 minutes outside of New York City, but I look over his shoulder, I can make out Dublin. 2 dead wives, empty glasses of Guinness, the wagon he could never stay on, and ended up walking or crawling home most nights. He'd then punch and kick anything that got in his way. Wives, kids, dogs. If I stare long enough, I could see him puff on that cigar. smoke flowing out of his mouth, straight up from the fire in his stomach, all that way, straight up from hell. And this is the last one I'm going to read. It's when we went into self-isolation, self-quarantine 3 months ago in early March. There was a lot of anxiety and confusion and fear. So so I worked on this poem for the past 3 months up until maybe 2 weeks ago. And this is what came out of that isolation. And I live in Manhattan, and we really had a tough time of it. We're starting to come out of it a little bit. I think today is the first day we open up, the first phase of opening up. So that's hopeful. But 16,000 people died here. It's hard to get your head around that. So there's some anger in this poem, some frustration, some tension, some fear, etc. So it's called Not Asking for Much. I want it growling like a wolf as it runs towards me before it lunges. Godzilla, stomping, each footfall an earthquake as it moves up First Avenue. A spaceship shaped like a large plate in the middle of a dinner table with enough food in it to feed an entire family of 5, spitting a strange sound before it lands in Central Park. I need noise that will give me enough time to run and get away. Instead, this virus is the invisible man, Claude Rains, walking silently. I have no idea when it attacks. And there's no special ray gun or sword that lights up when lifted in both hands. Instead, the weapon isn't designed by Spielberg. It turns out to be a bar of soap. That's right, the bar of soap that rests in a dish near my toothbrush. It can't kill the virus except for the germs growing in it. We all have to stay at least 6 feet away from strangers to help stop the spread. I like to say as far away from them as my ex-wife, but not far away as my last girlfriend. A hotspot used to mean a trendy restaurant downtown where I could never get a table. Now the entire city is a hotspot where there are no empty beds in any hospital that is filled with the sick and dying. New York, this has got to stop. I want you back the way you were. I want subways to rattle and shake the fear out of me. Trains to leave Grand Central and come back the exact same way. Empty streets, crowded again with people whose faces are countries I have never been to, and all laughing and talking, blending together, sounding like the globe. It's not asking too much. I don't want to wear a mask anymore, as if I'm riding with the James gang on our way to rob a Chase Bank. I want to be able to sneeze and not be afraid I killed anyone. At least, I still believe in the leaves on the tree outside my apartment building. They will soon look like they were dipped in cream for 2 weeks before blowing away and are the first sign of a spring every year. Come on, New York. I'm not asking for much. I would give anything, really, just about anything, if I could simply walk up to you and shake your hand. That's it. Thank you for listening.